Welcome back to Arizona Moves Homes. So today's segment, I'm going to be interviewing Troy with Modern Home Lending. I have actually prepared a few questions for Troy. Troy, I've often, when representing buyers, especially in this market, if they're not qualified, they're always missing out on grabbing that great deal.
Agreed.
Could you address that issue?
Yeah, so really the first step in the whole process, everybody kind of wants to put the cart before the horse and go out there and look at homes because that's truly the fun part, right? You're looking for your next dream home. But in reality, the pre-qualification process is really the most important piece because I always explain it like it's going to a Black Friday sale without your wallet. You've already picked out all the things that you want, but
Good
when you
analogy.
get there, you can't buy it. So it's always good to get pre-qualified first to know what your maximum budget is. And that way you have a gauge to know what your spending limit is. And if you decide to go lower than that, then that's totally their option.
Actually, you brought up a good question. So how do you know what your maximum budget is?
Well, that all stems from a pre-qualification. So when a borrower starts a pre-qualification, typically I'll have them do it online. It takes them 10 to 15 minutes at the most. And I'll review the application, we'll run credit, we'll start collecting the necessary documentation. And that way it gives me the idea or the basis to be able to gauge as to what their maximum qualification is. And then I'll send out a comparison to show them, at the top level of their budget on down, what those payments would look like associated with that interest rate.
So actually brought up a point that leads to a question. A lot of people have concerns about the market right now and buying now because of the crash that happened, as we all remember, going back several years ago. What's different today in qualifying for a mortgage that protects the buyer that we won't have that same issue? You wouldn't mind
Well,
addressing?
I mean, there's no way to gauge whether or not a market is going to correct itself, right? Because it is the housing market. Prices are going to fluctuate up and down as we've seen over the course of the last 8 years, right? But the big difference is what you just brought up, is pre-qualifying. Buyers today, they have to actually pre-qualify. They have to show proof of income. They have to show, and especially now with what's going on in the world, with COVID being such a prevalent force, there's even more scrutiny in the market now in regards to borrowers' employment, their income, and making sure that things like their debt to income ratios are in line so they're not overextending themselves.
And that's important, and I think that's why I don't have the same kind of fear that we're going to see what we saw several years ago. I think it's going to be very different, especially if you're buying a home and you plan on staying in it. Eventually, we do have corrections, but it just kind of balances
and I think
off.
the market dynamic is completely different as well, because in that time there's a lot of investors in the marketplace, and so they, when home prices are being artificially inflated due to a kind of a demand that isn't present today. Today we have a lot of single-family homeowners looking for homes. We don't have investors out in the market looking for those homes. So even though prices are steadily going up, interest rates are staying down, affordability is still a great thing to be had. But at some point I would venture to guess that things are going to correct and we'll probably see prices starting to flatten out a bit. But going back to your point, buyers have the security of knowing that if you truly get pre-qualified, you're going to be safe in knowing that you're going to be able to make that monthly payment.
Tell me what the difference is between a mortgage broker like yourself or a banker.
Well, a good question, because I've been on both sides of the fence. A mortgage banker typically has everything is done in-house. So their underwriting is done in-house, their processing is done in-house, and that's great. It streamlines the process. However, it doesn't leave you a lot of flexibility, because if the company that LO works at, that loan officer works at, their guidelines are their guidelines. Whereas with me, I've got, as a broker, I can shop 35 different lenders and look for different programs, different rate options, because they do vary across the board depending on the lender. So it allows the borrower a lot more flexibility when it comes to shopping for their next mortgage.
Absolutely. And that's why I choose to work with you, because I know that you're not beholden to anyone, and
Right.
you're going to be able to get the best rate for the buyer. So Troy, how long does it take to get pre-qualified?
Well, the pre-qualification process is really simple. Once I have the application back, I run credit. As long as the borrower can get me the documentation in a timely manner, I can have a pre-qual done within hours of actually reviewing the application. So, there's a lot of borrowers again who go out there, they find their house, they want to make an offer, but they haven't gotten the pre-qualification done yet. It doesn't take long. It really only takes as long as the borrower to get me the documentation that I need in order to complete that process.
Exactly. And what documentation are you referring to?
Income, assets. We've already run credit, so just basic documentation.
Okay, so fairly simple.
Yes.
Okay, and definitely well worth it to be able to get your offer on that house that you want instead of competing with everybody in this crazy market. Just closing thoughts. What else do you think that our buyers need to know from a lender like yourself?
I just think they need to understand that the real estate market is ever changing, and so the market that we're in right now, it's a little bit more competitive than it normally would be. With that being said, it's even more important to get pre-qualified, to understand what your budget is, to understand what your goals are. Even though you're pre-qualified for a certain amount, that may not be the amount of money that you want to spend on a home because it doesn't fit within your monthly budget. So, scaling that back, understanding exactly what it is that's going to work for you, and that's all the beauty of getting pre-qualified, is understanding how all of that meshes together and what you should actually be looking for.
I've included Troy's info for any of you that would like to contact him. Email, phone, text, he's always available. I really appreciate your being here today, Troy, and educating our buyers. And I look forward to seeing you again on our next segment of Arizona Moves Homes. Again, thank you.
Thank you.